There's a country in northern Europe with fewer people than the state of Florida. Fewer people than Ohio. About 10.5 million human beings spread across forests, lakes, and a long, cold coastline near the Arctic Circle. It is smaller in population than many single American states, and its entire economy is a fraction of the size of the United States economy. And yet, when the biggest mine on the planet needs a drill rig that can chew through solid rock more than a mile underground, when the deepest tunnel project needs a crusher that will not quit, when an iron ore operation needs a fleet of loaders that run on batteries in the dark, the machine that shows up is almost never American. It is Swedish. This is the strange truth nobody in Peoria wants to say out loud. A nation the size of a mid-sized state quietly builds the iron that the world's hardest job sites actually run on, while America rides on the fading name of one single company. So how does a country this small out-engineer the entire United States in heavy equipment? Stay with me, because the answer is going to make you look at that yellow paint very differently. For most of the last century, America believed something simple about machines. It believed that big countries build big iron. It made sense. The United States had the steel, the coal, the rivers, the railroads, and the sheer scale to pour concrete and move mountains. And out of that came Caterpillar, a giant that came to mean construction itself. The yellow bulldozer became a symbol of American muscle. For decades, if you wanted the heaviest machine on earth, you bought it from Illinois, and you felt like you were buying a piece of the country's strength. That assumption, that bigness needs a big country, sat unchallenged in the minds of operators, fleet owners, and investors for 2 generations. But scale is not the same thing as depth. And Sweden was building something different the entire time. Not one champion company, but a whole cluster, a tight web of engineering firms that each took one hard problem and refused to let it go. While America bet everything on a single brand, Sweden built an ecosystem. And that difference, one giant versus a web of specialists, is the whole story. Start with the part of mining that almost nobody outside the industry thinks about. Underground rock. Drilling holes into rock that is harder than concrete, deep below the surface, where the air is hot and the margin for error is 0. This is the most brutal, most technical corner of the entire heavy equipment world, and an American flagship in it barely exists. The company that owns this space is called Sandvik. Sandvik is a Swedish industrial group with revenue of around 123 billion Swedish crowns in the year 2024, which is roughly 11 to 12 billion United States dollars. About half of everything Sandvik makes comes from mining and rock. Underground trucks, loaders, surface drill rigs, the actual cutting tools, the rock drilling steel that grinds into the earth. Sandvik holds a market-leading position in those tools, the consumable steel teeth that every mine on the planet burns through and reorders year after year. When a Caterpillar dozer pushes dirt, that is one sale. When a Sandvik drill chews rock, the mine comes back to buy the drill steel again and again forever. One of those is a transaction. The other is a toll booth. Now sit with that. The single hardest discipline in the entire industry, the one that requires the most metallurgy, the most precision, the most accumulated knowledge, is dominated not by the American giant, but by a Swedish company most viewers have never heard of. And Sandvik is only the first pillar. The second pillar is Epiroc. And the story of Epiroc tells you everything about how Sweden thinks. Epiroc used to be part of an even older Swedish firm, and in the year 2018, it was spun off and listed on the Stockholm Exchange as its own focused company. The Swedes looked at a sprawling industrial empire and decided that the mining and rock excavation business was too important, too specialized, to be one division among many. So they cut it loose and let it become a pure specialist. The result is a company with revenue of roughly 64 billion Swedish crowns in 2024, around $6 billion, employing close to 19,000 people across more than 150 countries. Epiroc builds the drill rigs that open the world's underground mines. It builds the loaders and the trucks that haul the ore out in the dark. And here's the part that should worry anyone holding the old American assumption. Epiroc is not just keeping up on electrification. It is leading it. Epiroc runs a battery-electric underground fleet branded as the Smart and Green series, machines that have logged more than 60,000 operating hours underground. Its battery-electric mine truck carries 42 tons. Electric trucks remove all of the toxic exhaust from the tunnel, cut the heat by around 80%, and slash carbon emissions dramatically, which means the mine needs far less ventilation, which saves enormous amounts of money and electricity. That is not a press release. That is a structural advantage. The future of underground mining is electric and quiet, and the company writing that future answers to Stockholm, not to Illinois. The third pillar is Atlas Copco, the older parent that Epiroc came from. Atlas Copco is one of the largest industrial companies in all of Europe, with record revenue of around 177 billion Swedish crowns in 2024, roughly $16 billion, and about 55,000 employees, selling into something like 180 countries. Atlas Copco makes the compressors, the vacuum systems, the power tools, and the industrial equipment that quietly sit behind almost every factory and construction project on Earth. You do not see Atlas Copco on the news. You see it in the airline feeding a jackhammer, in the compressor running a remote drill, in the assembly tools tightening the bolts on the cars you drive. It is invisible infrastructure. And it is Swedish. And its profit margin sits north of 20%, which is the kind of number that makes an American executive go very quiet. The fourth pillar rolls on the road. Scania. Scania builds heavy trucks, the kind that haul everything heavy iron makes possible, and it is one of the most respected and most profitable truck makers in the world. In 2024, Scania sold around 102,000 vehicles and pulled in sales revenue of nearly 19 billion euros, with an operating return that the American truck industry can only dream about. Scania trucks are famous for engineering that lasts, for fuel efficiency that wins contracts, and for a level of build quality that turns drivers into lifelong loyalists. Again, a Swedish name, again dominating a category through depth rather than breadth. And yes, there is Volvo Construction Equipment too, a Swedish builder of loaders and articulated haulers with billions in sales. But here's the discipline of this story. Volvo is just one pillar among many. The point is not any single Swedish brand. The point is the cluster. Sandvik in rock and tools. Epiroc in underground drilling and electric mining. Atlas Copco in compressed power. Scania on the road. Volvo in earth moving. 5 world-class heavy industry players, all from a single country with the population of a medium American state. America has one true global heavy equipment champion. Sweden has a whole team. So the real question is not what Sweden builds. The real question is why. Why does a tiny, cold, expensive country with high wages produce this much engineering firepower while a continental superpower coasts on one brand? The first reason is heritage. Sweden has been mining iron for centuries. The ore in the north of the country is some of the richest on the planet, and the Swedes have been pulling it out of the ground, smelting it, and refining the tools to do so since long before the United States existed. When your entire national identity is wrapped up in iron and rock, you do not treat mining equipment as a side business. You treat it as the family trade. The knowledge compounds across generations of engineers who grew up in mining towns, who studied metallurgy because their parents worked the mines, who see a drill bit the way a violin maker sees a violin. The second reason is patience. Swedish industrial companies are often held by long-term owners, families and foundations that think in decades, not in quarters. That kind of ownership lets a company pour money into a hard engineering problem for 10 or 15 years before it pays off. It lets Epiroc spend a fortune perfecting a battery electric loader that the market is only now starting to demand. It lets Sandvik keep refining a rock tool that is already the best in the world, just to make it 1% better. Caterpillar, by contrast, answers to Wall Street every 90 days. Its leadership is rewarded for protecting margin, for buying back stock, for managing the dealer network like a cash machine. There is nothing evil about that. It is simply a different game. One country optimizes for the next quarter. The other optimizes for the next generation. Over 40 years, those two strategies drift very, very far apart. The third reason is the bet on a clean future, and this is where the gap is widening fastest right now. Look at what Sweden is doing with steel itself. There is a project called HYBRIT, Hydrogen Breakthrough Iron-Making Technology, run by the steelmaker SSAB, together with the state mining company and the power company. The goal is to make steel using hydrogen instead of coal, producing what they call fossil-free steel. They rolled the world's first batch of it years ago and delivered it to a Swedish customer, and they are pushing toward industrial scale now. Think about what that means. Sweden is not just building the machines that dig the ore. It is reinventing how the iron in those machines is born, from the ground up, with almost no carbon. The same country that drills the deepest, that builds the loaders, that runs the trucks, is also rewriting the chemistry of steel. America has nothing at this scale even close to deployment. Now let me be fair, because this channel does not deal in fairy tales. The United States is not helpless, and Sweden is not magic. Caterpillar still has something that no Swedish company can match, and it matters enormously. It has the dealer network. Across North America and most of the world, when a Cat machine breaks down, a part is close by, and a trained technician can be on site fast. That web of dealers, that promise of uptime, is one of the most valuable assets in the entire industry, and it is the single biggest reason Caterpillar is still the largest construction and mining equipment maker on Earth, with sales of around $65 billion in 2024. No Swedish firm has replicated that reach. So, this is not a story of America being weak everywhere. It is a story of America being beaten in the deepest, hardest, most technical corners of the business. And I have to be honest about the framing, too. Calling Sweden a tiny country is a hook, not a full picture. Yes, it has only about 10.5 million people. But it is one of the richest, most industrialized, most highly educated nations in the world. It has world-class universities, decades of state support for industry, and that unique mining heritage I described. It did not do this from nothing. It built on an enormous foundation. So when I say a tiny country outbuilds America, understand that the word tiny means small in population, not small in capability. The whole point is that capability and headcount are not the same thing. All of these facts are sourced, and I will leave the verification in the comments so you can check every number yourself. But here is what makes this genuinely uncomfortable for the American story. Where does Swedish iron actually run? Go to the far north of Sweden, to a town called Kiruna, and you will find the largest underground iron ore mine in the world, run by the state company LKAB. The ore body there is around 4 kilometers long and reaches roughly 2 kilometers deep, with the main working level more than a kilometer below the surface, moving tens of thousands of tons of ore every single day. That mine is a proving ground. The Swedish equipment companies test their hardest machines in their own backyard, in real production, before they sell them to the rest of the planet. That is a feedback loop America simply does not have at the same intensity. Then look at the copper mine, called Aitik, run by the Swedish company Boliden. In 2024, it produced around 41 million tons of ore, and it does it with one of the highest degrees of automation in the industry, running fleets of self-driving trucks as part of normal operations. And the partners building that automated, electrified future are the same names. Boliden, working with Epiroc and Atlas Copco and others, plus the power and software firms, deploying the first fully battery-electric trolley truck system on an underground test track in Sweden, complete with a steep incline. The mine, the machines, the automation, the electrification, the steel, all of it stitched together inside one small country, each piece sharpening the others. That is the secret. It was never about one company being better than another. It is about an ecosystem being better than a champion. America put its faith in a single yellow giant and assumed that the size of the country guaranteed the future. Sweden built a dense web of specialists who feed each other, test on each other, and compound their knowledge, year after year, decade after decade, in the hardest discipline in the trade. And a web like that is almost impossible to beat with a single brand, no matter how famous that brand is. So when you see footage of the world's biggest mines, the deepest tunnels, the most advanced electric underground fleets, look closely at the machines. Look at the drill rigs biting into the rock. Look at the loaders running silent in the dark. Look at the trucks hauling the ore to the surface. More often than you would ever expect, the name on the side traces back to a cold country of 10.5 million people near the Arctic, not to the factory in Illinois that America still thinks of as the heart of the industry. If you want to watch Caterpillar keep losing ground, subscribe to QuiSoup. If you are watching on your TV, find QuiSoup and hit subscribe there. Quick break before we get into what happened next. If you have been on this channel for a while watching how Cat lost its way, there is a way to make sure you do not miss what is coming. Join the operator tier for $4.99 a month. You get badges that mark you as a working professional in the comment section, custom emoji to call out the corporate decisions that killed Cat, and you get every video 24 hours before the rest of the internet. To join, open your phone and search QuiSoup membership, or go to the channel page and tap join. Join the operators and engineers who are paying attention. Now, back to it. Here is what the Swedish story really exposes. America did not lose this fight because its engineers are worse. American engineers are some of the best on Earth. America lost the deep mining and rock business because of how it chose to organize its industry. It let the work flow to whoever could move dirt the cheapest and protect the most margin, and it stopped treating the hardest technical corners as worth fighting for. It assumed the brand and the dealer network would carry it forever. Sweden made the opposite choice. It treated the hard corners as the whole point. And over 50 years, that choice quietly handed the future of mining to a country smaller than Florida. You can already see where this goes next. The world is electrifying its mines because the economics are overwhelming. Less ventilation, less heat, less fuel, less diesel hauled to remote sites. And the company furthest ahead on battery electric underground equipment is Swedish. The world wants cleaner steel, and the company with the first fossil-free steel on the ground is Swedish. The world's biggest, deepest, most automated mines are being used as the test bed, and that test bed sits in Sweden. Every major trend pointing into the next 20 years of heavy industry has a Swedish fingerprint on it, while the American giant defends a network it built in the last century. So here is my question for you, and I want a real answer in the comments. Is Caterpillar's dealer network a fortress that will protect it for another 50 years? Or is it the last great advantage of a company that has already lost the technology race underground? Tell me in the comments. One more thing before you go. If you really want to be part of the inner circle on this channel, join the site Foreman for $9.99 a month. You get a public shout-out in upcoming videos. Your name, your operation, your story, validated in front of the entire QuiSoup audience. Plus, everything from the operator tier. To join, open your phone and search QuiSoup membership, or go to the channel page and tap join. The truth is that the heaviest iron on Earth was never about which country was the biggest. It was about which country cared the most about the hardest part of the work. And right now, that country is not America. See you in the next one.